Hello, BAME Farm fans. It's Memorial Day, and, well, the second half of May was really wet. You can see a small bit of drying on the plastic edges. Still dark and wet between the rows. Too wet to fiddle around in the fields. We'll just make a mess if we try. So at least there's a breeze today. Maybe it could be a little better for tomorrow. But what are we doing today? So we're planting tomatoes. There's peppers in front of me. Green beans have been seeded over there. We got a lot of varieties of tomatoes going in. There's Romas, Amish paste, red cherries, and celebrities waiting to go in. We got a yellow variety, Beefmaster, Rutgers, New Yorkers, and some big beef planted already. And we're caging as we go because these plants are big, really big. They were probably ready to go in the ground a couple weeks ago, but you know, rain. So they're going in plenty big. They'll take off and grow fast. We're caging them and to keep them off the plastic, because if they lay down, and they'll burn their poor little leaves on the plastic. And the joy of a tomato plant is it'll root pretty much all the way up its stem if it has to. So if it falls down and the stem touches, it'll put roots in the ground. So by burying these, we're just adding to the available root space, and they'll root up as deep as we can bury them. Now it's kind of, we can only punch these holes so deep, but really if we were planting a small home garden, we could dig a hole about 1 foot deep and bury them all the way up. Now, plants this tall would be a real challenge to get to go through a transplanter anyways. You put 2 tomatoes to a hole, they definitely fill up the cages, and it makes it, say, more efficient for the number of cages we need to support all these plants. And these are cherry tomatoes, so they're gonna grow really big anyways. A cherry tomato is the closest thing to a wild tomato there is. Just because it's not natural for anything to really want to make a large fruit most of the time. The wild variety of whatever plant humans have domesticated usually makes a very small or almost non-existent fruit. For our own use, we start or plant our own vegetables in these peat pots. That way we don't have to sit there and pull the plants out of cell packs. You see how root bound these are. That would disturb the roots more. Of course, I am sort of crushing the pots. It's kind of like when you pull something out of a pot and you fray or loosen the bottom of it. It's kind of like when you fray the roots a little bit to help it root out, to break them out of their pattern. Like roots, I've watched, you know, in the fall, I'll pull plants sometimes just for entertainment's sake to see how much they rooted out, and some things won't root out of the hole very well. And that's what I like to think, like, you know, crushing the pot like that, it disturbs the roots to force them to branch out some. So Dad came out and pre-punched holes yesterday. If you look down here, we can even pull some dirt out. It's moist. This is the log of dirt from the hole puncher, all dried out. There's plenty of moisture. We're planting on raised beds. Hopefully about a 4-inch raise if we can measure, say, from our lowest point out between the rows. Rain has not been an issue. Well, lack of rain has not been an issue. We've laid tape, like drip tape, and then I've never used it when we put it down. So then we gotta sit there and pull it back up in the fall. So that being prepared for dryness didn't make it dry. It was still wet that year. These are Roma, oh, these are Amish paste. These things look like they really like to root up the stem. Now we're to the caging portion of this operation. There's still plants going in the ground, but we're trying to cage them as quick as we can. And we're changing varieties. We're to the Amish paste tomatoes and the Romas. And the Romas are they're a determinate variety, and they're very determinate. They make all their tomatoes all at once. So these plants will be hanging full and heavy. So we use these old rebar cages for those. And we started out with many, many hundreds of these rebar cages in various styles. We didn't make them all. A lot of them were very short, and we've made taller ones. But we kind of retired most of the short ones when we got these conical cages. They came from an Amish produce supply warehouse that had a fire. And the cages are nice because they can be reused. I don't understand places that stake all of their tomatoes. They got to go out there and tie them. It seems like a lot of extra work. Yeah, there's a lot of storage involved moving the cages, but we don't have to buy stakes and twine and then have to deal with pulling the stakes and unraveling the twine. Yeah, we got to clean the cages. But especially this concrete reinforcing mesh cages right here, we set these and forget them. The holes are so small the plants really don't grow out of the cage at all. There's one thing we will have to do. We'll come back on these conical cages and we'll have to train them a bit. The holes are a little bigger on the side and the plants are flopping out. So maybe in a week or so they'll need that. I haven't made the video of letting plastic yet. There's still more plastic to go in, a lot more. But I put the plants in through plastic. The plastic keeps the weeds down, and theoretically the black plastic is unfavorable for bugs to want to walk across. So it should help keep the bugs down. But it's very nice for keeping the weeds down. It's a biodegradable plastic, so it's some sort of corn or soy oil based. And if it gets really, really wet, it'll deteriorate even faster. I mean, it obviously withstands rain to a certain point, but I've seen it when it gets submerged underwater, it gets brittle much faster and breaks down even quicker. In this area, I ran the chickens over, earlier in the spring to destroy all the early season weeds off, especially the grass. The grass makes it hard to get the soil tilled up good. And through their scratching, they dislodged and I guess broke down the rest of the plastic enough that you can't even see it. And there's barely any remnants out here. I'm trying to look. Here's a few little pieces, like real small. We did photodegradable for a while, and the stuff that was underneath the soil on the edge, that would last a little bit longer. This whole area is fertilized by chicken manure, because I had the chickens out here earlier. I didn't spread any cow manure on it because I guess the chickens, well, we figure with 1,000 of them out here for a couple weeks that they had left enough droppings to be sufficient. And really, we're good about coating this area with cow manure too. Some of the best dirt around the farm is where we plant the vegetables. It's had the most manure spread on it over the years. That's all we really use. And for a lot of, well, at least vegetable production, it's not necessarily the nitrogen you need, it's the P and K for seed production. If you give it too much nitrogen, you just end up with a lot of plant. And it's not always like corn, where yeah, nitrogen usually means grain. It's not always the case for vegetables like this. The one nuisance of these rebar cages is storage, and they really test out the accuracy of hole spacing. The conical ones are a little smaller, and I am really squeezing these cages tight out here, trying to center the hole as best as possible in the cage. Before we get to watering, we got to run all this hot water out of the hose. And we're stringing hose from the greenhouse. We've got, probably 400 feet of hose all stuck together to get out here. But I really wanted to show off. We can see the water flowing down this way. There's a gentle grade from the road to the other end of the garden, running towards the pond to get rid of water that way. I mean, yeah, I guess it helps that I'm kind of, the water's obviously being directed out of the hose down that way, but it is flowing in that general direction. Out there's more water flow. Yep, it's hot. We got black hose taking on a lot of sunlight. You don't want to burn the poor roots or the plants. See, like with this, we don't have to water the leaves. Just be straight in from the side. Plus I gotta water this cabbage before it goes in the ground. It's very wilty. Had a lot of wind, which is good for drying. Maybe we'll be able to go out and play in the field tomorrow and, get something ready for some more corn to go in. Oh yeah, and one nice thing, while I'm thinking of it, about running the chickens out here is tomatoes can get blossom end rot, and that is mitigated by calcium in the soil. And the chicken feed, by nature of the chickens laying eggs and the shells being full of calcium, or made of calcium, that invariably the chickens waste feed, some of it will pass through their digestive system, that we get calcium in the soil that way. Yeah, I know, look at my nice hat, isn't that fun? I mean, there's only so much. I like to get baked in the sun, so I've been wearing long sleeves and this nice big floppy hat. It's delightful, and this breeze really helps too. I'm not a big fan of sunscreen and whatever chemicals are in that. That's got cancer written all over it. So you can't get really sunburnt in the sun, and the UV rays can't get to your skin if you're covered. Trust me, I still get plenty tan. I don't wear this all the time. But when I know I'm going to be out in the sun all day like this, I'll cover up and look like a real gardening hippie. Yep. But the tomatoes taste good. That's all that matters. This is the watering portion of this exercise. Being out here for a couple hours in dry dirt, plus being pulled apart out of the flat, the plants have wilted a little bit and they're getting a slight bit wind beaten. And they give this is their last human drink of water for a while. We're pretty much going to rely on rain. And if it's the way things have gone, like most years, they will be well watered. And that's why we went to the raised beds. It's more about getting the water away, unfortunately. That's another thing that the plastic does, is it'll conserve moisture underneath, but to a certain point it also deflects some water away. But as we saw when I was planting, there's plenty of moisture under the plastic.